Right, let's bring in my guest, Michael Fabricant. He's Conservative MP for Lichfield. Michael, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Good afternoon to you.
My pleasure. Lovely to speak to you, Vanessa, and lovely to hear from Peter as well.
It's always a pleasure to hear from Peter, I must concur. Let's talk about Nadhim Zahawi and the firing. I wonder whether you feel that, I suppose, the party that you love and have served faithfully for so many years is tainted by this debacle, because it seemed to take a long time to get rid of him. There was a lot of foggy stuff about whether the Prime Minister knew and should have known and what was told and what wasn't told. And then Sir Lawrie Magnus finds 7 counts of breaking the ministerial code. So it's not a pretty look for the Tories, is it?
No, not at all. But you get that always when you're in government, actually, and I'm sure it'll happen with Labour just as it did when they were in power. Look, I was in business before I became an MP, to set up radio and television stations. I remember HMRC swept down on my company and did a massive great inquiry over VAT. In fact, after a week of having 4 accountants going through our books, it turned out that they owed us money. So we were vindicated. I'm not sure our accountant was, however. I don't know how we got into the position where we'd overpaid. But yes, I mean, I think the Prime Minister on this occasion behaved rightly. Don't forget, Labour was calling for the immediate resignation of Nadhim Zahawi because his great crime was that he'd actually made some money. You know, politics of envy and all that. And I'll just say, Vanessa, because I can see you opening your mouth to ask me a question. It's not uncommon, actually, to pay a penalty when you're in dispute. Don't forget that Nadhim Zahawi set up YouGov, massive corporation, not only based in the UK, but the US and other countries too. So there's always a question of getting the balance of tax right between what you pay the UK, what you pay other countries. But as soon as he got the report, Rishi then decided...
Michael, every word you say is a pearl indeed and, you know, would be allowed to resonate unchallenged on the ether were it not for the fact that the head of HMRC specifically said very clearly, you know, this is not a case of carelessness. It's not a case of this being somewhat complex, because after all, YouGov is a rather large business and, my goodness, also operates overseas. So, dear, you know, it was quite easy for Nadhim Zahawi to overlook this. That's absolutely not what happened, and the head of HMRC was very clear to make it known, just in case anybody like you might suggest that it is what happened. It's not what happened at all. He said carelessness doesn't evoke a £1 million penalty, and this wasn't carelessness. And Sir Lawrie Magnus doesn't find carelessness either, does he? Finds 7, not 1, not 2, not 3, Michael, but 7 breaches of the ministerial code. How is that okay?
Or is this a monologue?
You can speak if you want to. I'm entitled to a monologue. It's my programme. I'll do a Shakespearean soliloquy if I so choose. And you'll wait for me to give you the chance to speak, because that's what happens. When you're a guest on a show, you have to wait to have a chance to speak. This is now your chance. Do please answer.
Well, generally speaking, because I used to present a show, normally the presenter asks the fairly short questions and then gets the long answer.
Those are normal presenters. Nobody employed me to be a normal presenter. I'm Vanessa Feltz. That's my style. That's
TV, after all. But anyway, I do know of companies which have had penalties, even though there's no question of them breaking the law. What they did do, however, is argue points of law with the HMRC. So, you know, to try and make out, let's put it this way, if Nadhim Zahawi was doing a serious thing that you suggested in your monologue, why isn't he being prosecuted?
That's a good question. Let's ask Peter Cardwell.
Well, it is rare, Michael Fabricant. I mean, you're right. Lots of people do pay penalties for getting things wrong with their tax, but over £1 million, I mean, I wonder what this actually demonstrates, because over £1 million is more than most people earn in a lifetime if you're an average.
What's that got to do with it?
I'm not criticising
Nadhim. He was a successful businessman. I mean, are you also doing the politics of envy, Peter, because you're not paid well on Talk TV?
It's a very, very large amount of money. I'm not criticising Nadhim Zahawi for being rich. What I am saying is that that is a very, very large penalty, and I think people will feel that he is not connected to them when he has been, at the very least, careless, that he has broken the ministerial code. I mean, do you think it's right that he went?
Yes, I do.
I mean, it's interesting because you say it's right that he went, but you also imply that it wasn't much of a big deal and anyone who's in big business could have the same thing happen to them. And hey, you know, them's the breaks, kid. It wasn't all that serious. Was it serious or wasn't it? Should he have gone or shouldn't he?
Well, he shouldn't have broken the ministerial code. And that's what he clearly did. And as you said at the outset, on 7 different points. And Rishi Sunak acted immediately. But what I'm also saying is that Labour, right from the very beginning, said, oh, he paid several £1 million penalty. And because the sort of people who were saying that therefore he should be immediately sacked without even looking into it are clearly people who don't have any business experience at all. Now, of course, it's easy to play the politics of envy game as soon as you mention millions. But then if you want to attract really able, capable people to the House of Commons, and you start to say, well, you know what, we don't want millionaires, we don't want successful people, then we'll end up with the government we deserve.
But maybe we have the government we deserve, because
well,
is it not possible to attract people who are hugely successful, moguls, magnates, impresarios, entrepreneurs of all different ilk, but also honest and straight down the line and transparent? It's perfectly capable. I mean, we've had a list out this weekend, haven't we, of the top 100 taxpayers in this country, so the people paying the most tax.
Are you accusing Nadhim Zahawi? It's Talk TV accusing Nadhim Zahawi of dishonesty. It's one thing breaking the ministerial code, which he did. It's another thing being dishonest. There's no police investigation. Are you accusing him?
I'm not accusing him of dishonesty, but we've heard
him of dishonesty.
I'm not accusing him of dishonesty, but I'm saying that the head of HMRC was at pains to point out that carelessness is not penalised. So genuine carelessness is not considered to be any kind of sin or any kind of grave error worthy of punishment. But what Nadhim Zahawi did was not mere carelessness. Beg your pardon?
I've got constituents who've paid penalties, but nobody was suggesting. And they were
but they may not have been Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time. They may not have been at odds with HMRC, penalised by HMRC. And at the same, yeah, but it makes an enormous difference. It's the same thing as a dishonest policeman, isn't it? If you're head of HMRC. But I wonder then why you're making light of it, Michael, if you think it's serious.
I'm not making light of it.
What are you doing?
Vanessa, you're interrupting me again. I mean, I'm not making light of it. What I'm saying is it's one thing being dishonest, it's another thing breaking the ministerial code. That he clearly did, and Rishi sacked him because of it.
All right.
And Rishi was right to do so.
Okay.
But you're implying there was some sort of dishonesty.
Well, if it's not carelessness, what is it? If it's not carelessness and it is therefore deliberate, then what is it? It's something punishable rather than not punishable.
So are you saying it was dishonest?
I'm not.
He broke the law?
I would have to defer to the head of HMRC in this, but I would see the £1 million fine for something that was not mere carelessness. So the implication is it wasn't careless. There was some element of deliberate obfuscation. I don't know. Let me ask you something else. We're now awaiting, aren't we, the outcome of an inquiry into the conduct of Dominic Raab. We also remember Gavin Williamson and his conduct. We also remember the inquiry into the conduct and bullying of Priti Patel, and the inquiry found her to be guilty of having done such a thing. So I wonder whether you think that, I don't know, that you're mingling there with a rogues gallery, I don't know, a parliament of fowls. I'm not quite sure with whom, but whether this is a government tainted by bad behaviour.
I don't think it's tainted by bad behaviour. When it comes to bullying, you know, that is not so black and white, and that's why the inquiry is taking a long time to determine. It's actually being very, very concise and saying to civil servants, look, this is what I expect you to do. These are the objectives. I'm the minister and elected and chosen to do this. You're the civil servants who are meant to carry this out. Is that bullying? It's very, very difficult to say that. It's another thing altogether, of course, which is what you were talking about quite rightly at the beginning, about how quickly this was resolved with Rishi Sunak, because either you make the declarations or you don't. It's very clear, black and white. Bullying is not, and that's why it's taking time to do it.
I wonder if you're right.
Of course, Labour would love your characterisation about tainted in a rogues gallery.
They might enjoy it tremendously. I'm not sure that bullying is as difficult to define as you're implying. I think people know what professionalism is. I think they know what politesse is. And you've certainly attempted to castigate me several times for doing what you consider to be interrupting you, which you obviously think isn't appropriate. I'm the person asking the questions. I never know when you're going to finish.
I don't mind interrupting.
Well, at some point I have to stop you in order to ask you a question, because I don't know if, as far as I'm concerned, you could be about to embark on a 3 or 4 hour soliloquy. How do I know? However, you have ideas about the right way and the wrong way of being interviewed. Yes. And you've certainly voice them. And I think most of us have a pretty clear idea about what's appropriate in the workplace, what's the right way to talk to somebody in the wrong way, what's the way you talk to somebody if you're slightly irritated, mildly teed off or ticked off. And what happens when you're terrorising them or disrespecting them, making them feel dreadful. I think we know, don't we?
Yes, I'm not complaining about your interrupting. I'm complaining about long, lengthy questions, which I think is a little bit unprofessional in a broadcaster. But Vanessa, you're an experienced broadcaster, so don't take it too seriously.
I won't. Michael Fabricant, thank you very much indeed for joining us.